This is the Planning and Zoning Commission for July 9th, 2012. May I have the secretary call the roll, please?
Connie Yoshimura,
Here.
Bruce Phelps,
Here.
Stacy Dean,
Here.
Terry Park,
Here.
Dana Cruz,
Here.
Ray Hickle, Peter Mulcahy,
Yep.
James Ferguson,
Here.
Tyler Robinson.
All right, thank you very much. There are no minutes. Under the special order of business, Vice Chair Parks, would you please do the disclosures?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Phelps?
No.
Commissioner Deans?
No.
Commissioner Cruz?
No.
And Commissioner Ferguson?
I do, yes. I will be abstaining from voting on Resolution 2012-026 for case 2012-051. Although I was present when the case was heard on June 4th, I was not present when the reconsideration was heard on June 11th.
Thank you. Mr. Mulcahy? Connie?
No.
And I have none.
All right, thank you very much. We're on to the consent agenda items, resolutions for approval. May I have a motion, please? Commissioner Parks?
Madam Chair, make a motion that we approve the resolution as stated in 2012-026 related case 2012-051.
Point of order, please. Approval for the consent agenda.
Okay. Well, that's the only thing on the consent agenda. Okay, so it's approval for the consent agenda.
Yes, thank you very much, and it's been seconded by Commissioner Dean. Is there any objection to the consent agenda approval? Seeing and hearing none, that is approved. We're now on to E, unfinished business and actions of the public hearings, case 2011-104. The request is for the provisionally adopted Title 21 rewrite, Chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, and draft Chapter 14, in addition to the proposed amendments. This is not a public hearing. Commissioner Parks.
Madam Chair, I know that there's a couple issues that Sally has brought up that I'd like for her to address prior to me bringing this to the board or to the commission.
All right, thank you.
Basically, I just have one issue I wanted to bring to the board's attention. Our last meeting was June 19th, and that same day we received
Sally, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. I'm going to put it right. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
No.
A little better.
It's on. Hello?
Yeah, we go.
That close? Okay.
Okay.
The date of our last meeting was June 19th, and we received a memo, or you received a memo dated that same date. And in reviewing that memo, the very first item on it addresses off-site improvements associated with land use permits. And that is an issue that we had asked staff several times for some proposed language and some research on, and they completed that research. And I wanted you to revisit that issue if you would like. We had, if you will recall, amended 2103-100E to provide that the cost of an improvement associated with a land use permit could not exceed 3% of the cost of the proposed development. And the staff has indicated that most likely that would not pass legal muster, and it has suggested some language to amend that section to try to tighten it. The language is on the main part of the language is on page 7 of their packet, and it requires that the dedication or improvement bear a rational nexus to the public facility improvement to the public facility improvement needs created by the development. The extent of the requirement shall be no greater than what is proportional to the impact of the development. So I guess my question is, do you want to address this? Do you want to revise the amendment that you had previously drafted in light of this new information?
Where do you find this language? Where do you find this language?
The new proposed language is in their June 19th, 2012 memo to the Planning and Zoning Commission from Jerry Weaver, and it's on page 7.
Okay. Well, I don't have it. Do you happen to have copies of that available?
I think staff waved their hand over there.
You know, perhaps it's in a different section.
Through the chair, if I may, Exhibit N for in this evening's meeting packet, Exhibit N also contains a copy, Exhibit N. And that would be on pages 131 through 133 of Exhibit N, and the actual language is on pages 132 and 141. Exhibit N is simply a compilation of all the issue response memoranda that the Commission received.
Mr. Davis, you were in the queue. Is that your comment, or do you have any further comment? That was it? All right. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can I speak? Or?
Yes, please do.
Okay. I just wanted to point out that I'm reading it right now, and that's on page, well, it's page 133, and the wording that I see in the new 4A does correspond generally with what we had recommended they come up with.
I would think that the change is more substantive than, obviously, than what our recommendation was.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of, I don't want to say necessarily ambiguity, but a lot of things left unresolved from the reading that I just heard, at least. Commissioner Parks.
Madam Chair, my suggestion would be that we take this and work with it and leave the meeting open and come back to this. I think it's a large enough deal. We probably ought to have a work session over it for a few minutes and talk about it as a group rather than trying to solve that here tonight, if that would be appropriate.
Do we have a second to that? It's seconded by Commissioner Phelps. Do we have any objection to tabling that and for further discussion? Basically, what that will do is, I understand that we have some miscellaneous amendments for the variety of the chapters. The original intent for tonight's meeting was to close these chapters. Basically, what that would do is leave these chapters open for another cleanup session. We can go ahead and do the miscellaneous amendments that I understand are going to be proposed, but then we would deal with this issue and this issue theoretically alone briefly on August 6th after we've had a chance for the commissioners to do some further review. Is that acceptable?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would really prefer to get it done this evening. My sense would be is that perhaps we can work the issues that the commissioners have come up with already, this document here, and then we have the public hearing and possible action on Chapter 10, and perhaps the conclusion of that will have some time to work the issue.
Right.
But my preference would be to work it this evening.
Commissioner Pruz?
Yeah, I was going to just reiterate the same thing. My position is try to get it done today.
Right. What is the consensus of the commission at this particular point in time? Commissioner Ferguson, do you have a comment?
I was going to say work it tonight if we could.
All right. Okay, then that is the consensus. So, Commissioner Parks, would you care to withdraw your motion then?
Yes, ma'am.
All
I'll
right.
withdraw it and I'll come back.
All right. Thank you very much. What is the wish of the commission then at this particular point in time?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we take the proposed miscellaneous amendments and sit in front of us. I think they're there's, from each one of the chapters, there's some that's a package that's laying in front, and then I would recommend that we accept these and make them part of our findings. That's this.
That is a motion by Commissioner Parks. Do you, Commissioner Phelps, did you have a comment? We doing this chapter by chapter?
Well, the motion I heard was to approve everything. And
Right.
I guess my concern is that we need to at least have findings for the relevant sections of the chapters that
Yes.
each of us worked on, though.
Yes, yes. All right. So we can do that by having the motion for each chapter, or we can do it collectively with various findings of fact for the variety of the chapters. Commissioner Phelps, would you like to speak to your chapters? Or?
Yeah, I think we should
Yeah.
take it at least commissioner by commissioner to approach it that way.
Okay, I agree.
You'll find in this listing that it goes chapter by chapter, and the sections that I worked on began, well, there's not a page number, but it's chapter 7, where it says at the far right column, Phelps. Okay. The first change I have is a pretty standard change that has been utilized for other chapters of this code, where we're trying to distinguish between the specific development standards of the comprehensive plan, and we're trying to make explicit that the specific development standards of a particular chapter govern in the event of a conflict between the comprehensive plan and that particular chapter. We have that wording in other chapters. When I was reviewing the document, we did not have that wording in this particular chapter, so I'm proposing to add it.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. The next one, Madam Chairman, is in a section of code that we talked about briefly that concerns the wildlife movement along certain stream corridors in the municipality. And I indicated at that time that I had some concerns about that particular section. So what I have tried to do in the amendments here is try to deal with some of the issues, at least that I had. What it does it's numbered like 1, 2, 3 here. 2 is simply an addition to include solid waste because that's a fairly egregious type of facility. 3, what this does here is basically link the decision to the report provided by ADF&G, and it then confines the decision-making authority on this to the Planning and Zoning Commission and Planning Board during approvals, including discretionary approvals. And right now, any entity can impose these particular standards, and I don't think that's what we want. We want to have only those entities that deal with the development authorizations really have the ability to impose these standards. It's changed from, I don't know why it was discretionary beforehand and not mandatory, but now it's mandatory as well as discretionary. That's the change we have here. And then in the wording that is on, it's actually in little 2I, the wording is different to indicate that what you want is direct movement away from residential structures or other structures that are occupied on a frequent basis. The previous language was quite ambiguous, actually, and I think we're concerned about would be residential structures and structures occupied by humans, not necessarily just structures. And the last item, which is number 4, is essentially that the ADF&G has to provide a report, and the report has to identify that, in fact, there is a substantive wildlife movement in a particular corridor, and that the decision made by either the planning authority or the planning commission shall be based upon that report, and it should be based upon evidence inside that report.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. You ready to do yours?
Commissioner Ferguson.
Okay, if you can go back to page 1 of the same memo that Commissioner Phelps was working on, items 1, 2, and 3 have to do with allowing certain uses to continue in the I-1 industrial parks. in particular health service, instructional services, child care centers, religious assembly, and offices of government agencies. These exist today in industrial parks,
Yeah, thanks.
and they should continue to exist. Huffman Business Park is near where I live, and I visit frequently, and these types of services exist there, and I think they're proper in that area, and so I have included them. Here, there are limitations on square footage to make sure they don't get to be too big of a use. 4 talks about parking, which clarifies that parking reductions can be considered when you do your parking calculations. It's just a clarity. Item 5 talks specifically about interior remodeling and renovation and clarifies that those, when it's an interior remodeling, do not have to go through a site plan review. Clarifies existing. 6 is the same as 5 in just a different area, talking about that in interior remodeling you don't need to have a major site plan review. Chapter 5, Item 1, adds to a definition of a facility housing government shops, maintenance, repair centers, and equipment storage yards, and it adds the words "and supporting administrative offices." I think this brings clarity to what is required on that. Going back several pages to under chapter 7, number 6, insert a new sentence at the end of the paragraph which provides the square footage of on-site pedestrian walkways shall be credited against the requiring landscape quantity or required open space. If we're providing the surface, I think the developer should get credit for it. 8 is on warranty bond. This was discussed at length at the June 20th meeting. Just trying to bring clarity to the decision at that one. The warranty bond at that time had been 120%. I think the consensus of the body was that 100% was adequate, so I made that change. Number 9 has to do with Table 2107-1. We had a landmark tree, we wanted to have, we made a mistake, or common sense applied, and we had made a change, and I want to go back to what the change was, before we made the change. 21072 is buffer landscaping. Bed width and location changed 20 feet to 15 feet, changed 15 feet to 10 feet, and minimum bed width to 5 feet in the case of alternative compliance. And under alternative compliance, changed 10 feet to 5 feet. This allows, under alternative compliance, allows us to put a fence up. If we go back to our last meeting when we had people, I think it was the Gallo people in here, and they were lacking a foot, and it was causing some consternation for that project, this would give them the opportunity to put a fence up, and they wouldn't, in that case, be lacking a foot. Chapter 12, number 1, changes the definition of maintenance and repair of nonconformities. I think this change is in the sense of clearness and will help in the reading of it. Number 2, delete the except for section 2107.020B, stream, water body, and wetland protection. I don't know why that was set aside as an exception before, so we're deleting it. And number 3 is clarifying how you calculate the total project cost on a project.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Ferguson.
And Madam Chair, I'll be doing Tyler Robinson's because he's not here this evening. I will go through those that he has.
All right,
That'd
thank
be
you
okay.
very much.
On the third page in item number 5, it's an amendment to read for townhouses, the open space may be provided. This is basically because not all open space overlooks the fact that some townhomes and multifamilies are actually rental units or projects rather than exclusive use space may not be desired. The next page on item number 7, this is for just delete subsections B, C, F, and H. These, the provisions on this courtyards need to be more flexible and less prescriptive in nature. And if you'll look on, now we're in 07, item number 11, revise the first sentence to read, the decision-making body may approve a design innovation that is not covered by the menu choices to be used as credits up to 4 design features in a menus of this section. That's to make it a little bit more flexible. Next one is 25 feet, change it to 20 feet. And item number 13, change 35 feet to 30 feet. And then item number 14, add the following after the first sentence, the features set forth in paragraph E, year-round access to sunlight, H, sun traps, I, atrium, and K, sunlit and wind protection courtyard shall be each counted as 2 features. And then finally on chapter 14, amend the definition of townhouse style structures to read as the following: a residential building with 2 or more dwelling units in a row primarily attached at sidewalls in which each dwelling unit has its own access to the outside and the dwelling units are separated from one another by a common fire-resistant wall. The primary purpose of this is to add flexibility of what the units look like, townhomes. Units, even if they have to be front but no rear doors, some portions of the next units over or a row of townhomes that form a U or an L shape.
All right, thank you very much. I believe we have a motion on the floor for acceptance of the proposed miscellaneous amendments. Is that not correct? All right. And it was moved by Terry Parks, and it was seconded by James Ferguson. Is there any other findings of facts or further discussion on these proposed amendments?
On findings of fact, we're challenged to balance a number of community desires on this thing, and there's multiple ways to solve these problems. If you take a cook in a kitchen and ask the cook to make cookies, you could have 4 or 5 people use a different recipe, and they all come up with different cookies. And what we're trying to do here was come up and give the designers the tools in which they can meet the desires of the community.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Phelps?
Yes, speaking to the issues that I brought up earlier this evening, the reason or the rationale that we used for actually including the distinction between the comprehensive plan and the development standards with the development standards in Chapter 7 controlling was to provide clarity in subsequent decision-making made by entities inside the municipality, including the decision bodies. This provides the clarity that really is necessary. And in terms of the section that deals with wildlife movement corridors, there had need to be additional clarity as to the entities that had the authority to impose this, the basis on which such requirements could be imposed, and also to ensure that the decision-making was based upon factual information supplied by a state agency that has jurisdiction in that particular area of expertise.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments, findings of facts, discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, that motion is approved, and that concludes our work on the provisionally adopted Title 21 rewrite, Chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, and Chapter 14. Thank you very much. We are now moving on to the public hearings. The procedure by which the public may speak to the commission at its meeting is, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the commission rules of procedures. Petitioners, including all his/her representatives, 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc., 5 minutes. And if you are representing a group, please identify yourself and the group. And individuals, 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the commission. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Planning and Zoning Commission takes. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after the Planning and Zoning Commission's final decision. Any individual may request written findings from any commission decision within 7 days. We are now ready for the public hearing, case 2011-087, the Municipality of Anchorage, an ordinance amending Title 21, Chugiak Eagle River Land Use Regulations. Does the petitioner, the Municipality of Anchorage, have any comments they wish to make at this time?
Madam Chair, we do have a brief staff report, if you're interested in just pointing out some of the highlights from the staff report.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Basically, the Community Development Department has reviewed the proposed draft chapter. That's with the revisions provided by the consortium of Chugiak Eagle River Consortium of Community Councils, and we have some comments on some of the issues on there. I want to also note that the department received comments from 6 public agencies, and there was one received from the Chugiak Eagle River Chamber of Commerce, and that was forwarded to the department from the consortium. Briefly going through some of the issues that we saw in the review. Number 1 being in the overall recommendation is that it's because of the Chapter 2110 is so closely linked to the main provisionally adopted draft that that's the way the review had to occur as far as what the staff did. But due to the possible scope of amendments that may occur with that, our recommendation would be to hold back on Chapter 2110 until the other chapters are adopted. Then it can be more easily, the amendments made more easily to work in sync with that overall Title 21 rewrite. For number 2 would be in 2110-020D on the nonconformity determinations. And due to the possible impacts on staff workload, the department does not support the fee waiver that's proposed in there for the nonconformity determinations. Number 3 is on 2110-030B on the Chugiak Eagle River Advisory Board. The department received recently a legal opinion raising the possible risks of litigation, forming this board under some various scenarios, whether it's Title IV as a service area board and even as a board under Title II, it's on the community council authorities. Based on the opinion, the department would recommend taking that section out. And the legal opinion also pointed out that the consortium could continue as an advisory board formed by the community councils in the Chugiak Eagle River area, and that would not require any additional codification. Number 4 would be 2110-030C and D, which would be the master planning process and area master planning. The department recommends that some additional work be done on this section, primarily to clarify some areas. For example, the master plan needs to provide significantly more detailed information than a neighborhood or district plan, and the process that's laid out in 2110-030D would need some revisions to accomplish that. And secondly, the section also should clarify when the area master plan would be required, and to tie this section to the comprehensive plan, which calls for master planning for the Eklutna 770, the Powder Reserve, and the area's designated development reserve on the land use plan. For number 5, 2110-040 zoning districts, the Chugiak Eagle River Comprehensive Plan justifies the creation of a few new zoning districts. However, Chapter 2110 creates 30 new districts, most of which are based on existing districts, but with the CER prefix. The expansion of 30 new districts in the code should be considered only after careful consideration of the legal factors, administrative complexity, and expansion of governmental regulation that may occur. So the department would recommend a legal review before this proposal is implemented. Finally, in that section, there's some district-specific standards in that section, which indicate a maximum gross density, which potentially could create a conflict between these standards and the minimum lot requirements that are in 2110-060. Number 6 would be 2110-050, use regulations. Some use types and definitions in Chapter 2110 are similar to the uses and definitions already in the provisionally adopted draft in Chapters 2105 and 2114. So the department recommend that there be that these use types and definitions should be uniform throughout the municipality, a process to do that. There's another issue spotted on legal review would be recommended for some of the uses, and one in particular was the use regulations for telecommunications towers. There's a difference in Chapter 2110, and which calls for conditional uses, and in the corresponding districts in the Anchorage Bowl, in the provisionally adopted draft. So department would recommend a legal review just to make sure there's not a violation of a Telecommunications Act. And number 7, 2110-060, which is the dimensional standards. And one district in particular would be the CER R6 zoning district. And it's proposed in this section to allow both half the abutting right-of-way to be used in the lot size calculations, and also to reduce the minimum lot size from 1 1/4 acres to 1 acre. This has the potential to reduce the actual lot size by 40% or more, depending on the number of lot frontages that abut a right-of-way and the width of the right-of-way. The department recommends removing the allowance to use half the abutting right-of-way in a lot size calculation, but also reducing the lot size, as was done in the provisionally adopted draft for the R6 district. The next issue is in 2110-070B, the stream buffer and setback. This section proposes to allow encroachments and fill within the outer 15 feet of the 25-foot stream protection setback. And according to the Municipal Flood Hazard Administrator, these changes will result in a 5% increase in flood insurance premiums across the municipality. And the department would recommend at a minimum that the stream protection setbacks and, the associated regulations should be the same as in the provisionally adopted Title 21 and with the administration's amendments. Issue 9, 2110-110F would be the large fabric structures as primary and accessory uses. The department recommends that fabric structures should only be used as accessory structures and not for principal structures. The department further recommends there should be a size limit in the Class B districts and a limit on the number of structures per lot. And due to drainage and runoff issues, a lot line setback for these structures should be considered the same as in the provisionally adopted draft. And finally, 2110-110M as home occupation. The issue that sort of came up here was the department's concerned with the cumulative impacts of allowing a number of things on a lot, especially in R6. Multiple home occupations, reduction of lot size, allowance for multiple large accessory buildings, and reduction in lot setbacks. And the combination of structures and activities would have the potential to dramatically change the character of what is now the R6 district and Chugach Eagle River. And that's pretty much the main issues, and planning staff's available for questions. That concludes the staff report.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions of staff at this time? Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the flood insurance that you mentioned. Do you have anything in writing from anybody, from an actuary or a underwriter that substantiates that comment?
Through the chair, Mr. Cruz, no. The only thing we have is the comments in the packet from the flood administrator, which would be, let me find the page here. Page 79 of 175 and 80. That's all we have.
Would it be hard for the department to go out and check in the industry to see if there is an additional cost, or what the ramifications are and percentages?
Through the chair, Commissioner Cruz, staff can follow up with the flood administrator and see if we can get some more information.
Yeah, it just, something from people that actually underwrite, property and casualty. And, a lot of people don't elect flood insurance to begin with. And so if you don't elect it, then obviously then you're not paying for it. If you do, just what the incremental cost would be. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any other questions of staff at this time before we open the public hearing to public comments? All right. If you are here to testify, you are now welcome to come forward regarding an ordinance amending Title 21 Chugach Eagle River Land Use Regulations, Chapter 10. Would you please state your name for the record?
My name is Daniel Bowles. I'm representing the Chugach Eagle River Consortium of Community Councils, who are the authors of this chapter.
Thank you very much. You have 10 minutes. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right, you have 5 minutes. Correction.
5 minutes. Okay, we'll make it quick then. Concerning the staff analysis, we've gone through and we've noted that there are concerns there. Most of their concern, though, comes from we believe adequate communication, because Chapter 10, as they say here, they're looking at, for instance, creek setbacks, things like these, as being perhaps something coming from outer space. They're not. They're coming from existing code. Current code allows you to have the 25-foot setback to encroach within 15 feet with land clearing. You can put a wellhead there. You can do things like that within 15 feet of the creek. You can also have trails, etc., in those areas. So unless they say that existing structures are going to increase 5% on their flood insurance, I don't think they're planning to increase them retroactively throughout the municipality. But mainly, let's start off with the nonconformity determinations. We're asking for the same thing that was given to the citizens of Anchorage in Girdwood. When their code was changed, they were given that option to have 1 year moratorium on the $115 an hour fee the municipality charges. And so that's all we're asking for here too. As to the, this is a municipal action. It's having an effect on the neighborhood, and it shouldn't be up to the individual homeowner to have to bear that cost. Giving them a year to come forward is more than equitable, I think. As far as the master planning process, the Staff brings out that the only similar situation exists for the development reserves and the Eklutna 770 program. The fact is that the native village of Eklutna and the Interior Department, U.S. Interior Department, own over 700 acres up Eklutna Valley, which are owned by government entities and are zoned R10SL. And that is what this master plan process and master planning scenario is working to take care of, is those large government-held parcels up there, so that they will come forward and have that. It is, we've referred to 3 places under the master planning process in Chapter 2103, for how it will go through. We don't think there needs to be a rehash or redevelopment of that under the master planning process, because we refer back to Chapter 2103. The zoning districts, yes. This is something Eagle River wants the right to sit down and say what happens in their zoning districts. So they're asking to have their own zoning districts. They repeatedly have actions taken against them, they feel, and then it comes back and they do not have any recourse. They want to have control of their zoning district. This is a right of self-determination in accordance with their own comprehensive plan. And that is why this is coming forward. Let's see. Also concerning here on page 6, they say presumably they want to justify these zoning districts because it's justified by the Girdwood situation. That's not at all what's happening here. We are not doing that. Once again, this is a right of the people to make up their own minds of what is happening in their jurisdiction. Concerning the R3 multifamily districts, yes, you'll get down to 7 dwelling units per acre, but it's still single-family housing, which in the R3, I believe, this body is approved in the R3 and the R4 district.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Bowles. Do the commissioners have any questions at this time? We would appreciate if we could have 3 more copies for 2 absent commissioners and a file copy. So if you would be able to circulate those at a later date, we would appreciate that. Commissioner Ferguson, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question for the applicant. If you had an opportunity to read the city attorney's comments, and can you reply to his comments?
Oh, the advisory board? The advisory board?
Yes.
Yes, we did take a look at that, and I can let Ryan Stencil address that if you want.
We received them same time you guys did as the night of the 3rd, okay. And so we haven't had a chance to sit down and talk with the municipal attorney's office, but we are not proposing this as a Title IV committee, or as a natural extension of the community councils, which would be in Title II.
Ryan, could you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Ryan Stencil, Stencel.
And how do you spell your first name? R-Y-A-N?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from commissioners regarding their testimony?
You say you're not considering as Title II or Title IV. Where does the authority for your board come from?
It would be in Title II as a natural extension of the community councils. The consortium of community councils is all 6 councils together, and we're proposing a natural extension of that, adding 1 seat for the native village of Eklutna.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions. Excuse me, Commissioner Mulcahy.
Not necessarily. I'm trying to figure out how this thing moves forward. Will we be able because their response was just given to us, and
Right.
will there be an opportunity to have them talk to us again at a future time, or how is that going to work? If we have questions as we go through this?
I think given the amount of volume of material that has been presented in written form, and we have accepted that material, that it would be appropriate for us to continue with the public testimony, for perhaps the commission to have some discussion about the public testimony, but to postpone any final decisions on Chapter 10 until the August 6th meeting, and in the interim, have a work session or schedule and have a subcommittee?
Would they hold their rebuttal then until that time, or how would that work?
The rebuttal is from the petitioner, and the petitioner is the municipality of Anchorage, so there is no rebuttal from, from those people giving testimony. Are there any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify? Would you please come forward at this time? Would you please state your name for the record?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, my name is Tim Potter with Dowell HKM, representing Eklutna Incorporated tonight. First off, I've got a number of items to go through, and at the end I'll try and...
Excuse me, I'm just trying to clarify, when you represent Eklutna, I believe you are entitled to 3 minutes, not 5, because you're not representative of a group.
That was my thought.
All right. Thank you very much.
Right.
I'm sure there might be questions.
Okay. And that's Eklutna Inc., not Eklutna Village or the Tribal Council. First off, I think just going through a few points. One of the items that has been discussed is the advisory board. And we really see that as if it's an item that's necessary in the belief of the community council members making up the Eagle River, Chugach, Birchwood area, that it would likely be an appropriate extension of their volunteer services, that they have a committee that does that, and between them they do that, and that it not be an official advisory board like the Girdwood Board of Supervisors is, and that, again, stacking again and again additional review bodies that have to be scheduled and you go before does take time and does hurt the continuity of the process and seems like a little bit of redundancy. I know that Eklutna's got a good history of working with the community out there. When there's multiple community councils involved, they go to each one. I think it can be done and done successfully without having technically an advisory board that's a go-to mandatory body that you have to take a project through. Second item is the area master planning. And as indicated, currently most of Eklutna's property is already zoned PC, which is Planned Community District, or it's a development reserve, which then in the future, depending on how you develop it, requires that you do a master plan and then come forward with new zoning. So you end up getting there Anyway, what I would caution is that our experience in Girdwood is that there is some streamlining and cleanup that should be done in the Girdwood master plan, area master plan, and development master plan. And that needs to happen, and we shouldn't make the same mistakes in the Eagle River, Chugach, Birchwood area. Again, on page 30, and we actually see on page 10 that the rural commercial is really kind of taking the existing B4 and taking that and running with it. On page 30, there's a number of uses like kennels that may be appropriate as conditional uses within the rural commercial district. On page 32 and 35, at the bottoms of those pages, if you can go to those, and I know that I'll be running out of time quickly, but there is a red line or red text at the bottom that reads, when the uses in a district are determined through a master planning or planned community process per those sections of the code, that this table may not apply. And we just want to make sure that everybody understands what that means as far as may apply or may not apply versus shall apply.
Are there any questions of Mr. Potter? Any questions at all? Commissioner Ferguson.
Well, I don't know, some of you haven't been through a planned community district review before as new to the body, but within that you can effectively write your own zoning ordinance. So that would be above, beyond, or different than what's currently here. In some cases, planned community districts have adopted special provisions, but then said that they would live by most of the provisions under the underlining zoning in the area. So that would basically be adopting the table. So I want to make sure that the may that's put here in red is understood that it is the applicant's option to totally opt out and create their totally exclusive zoning districts and ordinances associated with that as the PCD ordinance process. Or they can use some or all of the underlying land uses and dimensional requirements within this portion of the code. And that's what the may. I don't want to get 10 years from now in the future and have someone say, well, no, you can't use this part of the table because it just says may, or vice versa. So that was a big consideration.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on this matter? Would you please come forward at this time? Is there anyone else at all? Seeing and hearing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What is the wish of the Commission? Commissioner Parks.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we take this into consideration and have a work session for deliberation and more information.
All right. Thank you very much. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Peter Mulcahy. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, that motion is approved. What sort of clarification is it that you would like?
So in essence, what you're doing is postponing
Deliberations.
deliberations.
Yes, that is what we're doing. If you would turn to your schedule then for July and August, so that a work session can be scheduled. Is there, Commissioner Mulcahy, do you have preference for a work session? Time? Date?
So we would, the next meeting when we bring this up, that would be at the plan would be August 6th to actually take action?
Yes, that is correct.
So we're looking for a work session here in July.
That would be preferable, yes. Are you talking about July 30th? Yeah, is that what you're saying? The week of July 30th?
That would be fine. I can't, I'm out Monday, Tuesday. I will be back by the 1st.
All right, so I know that that is part of your constituency, so is there another time?
We've done work sessions on Wednesday evenings. Those seem to have worked, haven't they?
I believe,
You want to go Thursday evening?
I think Wednesday or Thursday evening would be,
I can't make either of those nights.
you can't make either of those nights. Commissioner Pruz?
I'll be out of town the first, second, third.
Okay, Ms. Dean,
We need to go soon.
you're okay? I'm okay. Terry, you're okay? Peter?
First or second one work for me.
All right. Jim?
First or second works for me.
All right, state your preference, Mr. Mulcahy.
Make it a second. Give me-
That would be Thursday, August 2nd. Ms. Kuskos?
That works for me. Scheduling-wise, the only concern I have is proposed amendments would need to be adopted.
Right.
It gives very little time if there's a lot of amendments to the chapter to be drafted and circulated prior to the final decision on that Monday. Might be better to move it up into the last week in July.
Mr. Mulcahy?
I am out.
You're out the week of the 22nd?
I could make it the 23rd or 24th. I'm out the 25th on.
Okay. The 23rd or 24th? Let's look again. Commissioner Phelps?
Either of those dates are okay.
Okay. Ms. Dean? No problem. Commissioner Cruz?
What date again?
The 23rd or 24th? The 23rd, I think.
Monday-
we're looking-
Monday the
Monday night, the 23rd. You have every Monday night reserved, right? Okay.
You live for this.
Yeah. All right. Very good. All right. Commissioner Parks?
Good, as long as we do it after 5.
After 5. All right. Very good. Yes. Most definitely. Commissioner Ferguson?
We're talking Monday, the 23rd, correct?
We are.
I'm good.
All right. So am I. That's it.
All right.
Monday, the 23rd of July at 5:30 p.m. At the Elmore Planning Department. Does that work for staff?
Someone send us an email, please.
Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you, Erica. It's a go. All right.
Very good.
All right. Very good. That actually concludes our public hearings, and we have no... Yes? Well, I don't exactly know what the status of that is. So, is there an amendment? Or is there just a recommendation that's been proposed by staff? Okay. We actually have closed it, so we've actually closed that chapter? Yes, we have. So we,
Perhaps this is something the Assembly can deal with.
I think that's correct. Thank you very much for that advice, Commissioner Phelps. We will leave that to the Anchorage Assembly. All right, very good. So, moving on, there are no reports from the Chair, the Secretary, or any committee. Is there any other further discussion on Title 21 discussion? Any Commissioner comments? Any Commissioner comments? Commissioner Phelps.
I'd just like to say that I am really proud of the Commission. This has been a really hard process. I've gone through it for I don't know how many years now, but it feels like forever. When the chairman suggested we begin this in January, my reaction was, yeah, sure. But I think we did a really good job, and I've been really proud of everybody working the way they have, and I'm really quite impressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Mulcahy.
I wanted to just say this, make the same comments as Commissioner Phelps, but also want to recognize the many years of work by lots of other folks. It has been an effort from many, many people across this entire community, all of whom really giving it their best effort to try to make this a quality document to lead us into the future. And I don't think the efforts of anybody should be missed. Over the years, our own and the work that's yet to be done, again, I salute everyone who's been a part of this process, and I think we're going to end up with a quality product.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Pruse.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for their help. I'd also like to make the comment that as a new commissioner a year and a half ago, the Paul Harvey rest of the story was not presented was just what was going to happen in Title 21. I will suggest that any new commissioner go through the rewrite of Chapter 21, because you will learn it inside and out, and what everybody really thinks. And so, that being said, it's been an interesting education, and I will make the comment that I think my wife really doesn't know what I do Monday nights. So I may need some testimony here, but put on the record.
All right, thank you very much. Not Commissioner Davis, but Tom Davis.
I apologize, Madam Chair, but I'm not sure if the Commission has deliberated and approved Chapter 14. Was it the intent of the Commission to approve Chapter 14? Thank you.
Chapter 14 is definitions. We did not do definitions. Yes, I'm sorry. We're going to have our consultant, Ms. Kuzkos.
We left Chapter 14 not approved at the last meeting so that we could continue the process. And there actually are some amendments to Chapter 14 that you have discussed, and we should, I can pull them out, but we should discuss them and vote on them. You would have already had an amendment chart and the red line version of those, and I can pull it real quickly.
We're going to have to reconsider our motion for approval on Chapter 14. Is there a motion for reconsideration? What? We did. I read it. I did read it.
When the motion that Mr. Park put forward was for the various amendments.
All right. So I've been advised. So would you please state your opinion? Thank you.
The motion that Mr. Parks put forward approved the various miscellaneous amendments, but it did not address the Chapter 14 amendments at all. We could move to revisit the unfinished business on 2011-104, but a reconsideration I don't believe is needed, because you're not reconsidering, and if you did a reconsideration, you'd have to hold it over to the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much. So what is the wish of the Commission regarding Chapter 14? Ms. Kuzkos.
Can I just speak real quickly?
Yes.
We did have all of the Chapter 14 materials before the Commission at the last public meeting on June 20th, I believe it was. And you decided not to vote on that so that it would not conclude the deliberations on Title 21. There are two amendments in addition to the definition of townhouse-style structure that you just adopted. There are two additional amendments that you proposed. One is the definition of should, since that was not previously in Chapter 14, and what you proposed is that you amend 2114-020J to add the word should indicates that compliance is highly recommended and encouraged but not mandatory. And the other definition, the other amendment was to the definition of Quonset hut, and the amendment was to change the definition to read a prefabricated structure usually made of corrugated metal in the shape of a longitudinal half cylinder. And those are the only two proposed amendments in Chapter 14, in addition to the townhouse-style structure definition.
Commissioner Phelps.
I think it'd be wise for us to take action on this evening. I understand we're trying to get out of here, but I think it behooves us to wrap this up. My sense would be is that we would come back into session, and that I would recommend or propose the amendments as stated by Ms. Kuzkos.
All right. Thank you very much. Commissioner Mulcahy.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to get clarification of status. I think we had we'd already moved and discussed and everything. We just
didn't take action.
tabled it.
Right.
We just need to bring it back up and take final action. But I think the motion and everything to include Quonset and should.
Yes.
All right. Okay, we need to have it in the form of a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that we amend Chapter 14 to deal with two issues, to deal with the word should and to deal with the definition of Quonset hut as described by Ms. Kuskos and also as further described inside this memorandum that I have in front of me.
All right, thank you very much, and that was seconded by Ms. Dean. Commissioner Pruse.
I just have a question on the, and I may have missed it, on the June 20th hearing. I've got checked off Chapter 3, 4, 5, 6. I did not, maybe I missed Chapter 7. Did we actually do Chapter 7? Okay.
Yep.
And then 8, not 14. And I didn't check off, for some reason, Chapter 1, 2, and 12.
We did that,
We did those.
for sure.
So, okay, so the two amendments that were with Jim's amendments on Chapter 12. Okay. All right, I'm good.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, that motion is approved regarding the two amendments for Chapter 14. Are there any special findings of fact that need to be addressed? I don't think so.
I would only add, in terms of finding of fact that the word should be identified is something that we use in code, that municipality uses in code all the time, and does provide substantial clarification of that word that's used in adjudication decisions frequently. The definition of Quonset hut is redefined to be consistent with the way it's normally interpreted in the decision-making process as it applies to development permits.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Davis, for bringing Chapter 14 to our attention. I appreciate it very much. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our consultant, Ms. Kuskos, who's done an outstanding and admirable job in assisting the Commission through 18 different work sessions and several public hearings. May I have, if there are no other further Commissioner comments, I don't see any in the queue, may I have a motion for adjournment? Commissioner Parks moved and seconded by Ms. Dean. Do I have any objection? Mr. Pruse, do you object?
I'm not used to paying attention this early in the night.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.